Okay, excellent. So welcome to our 9th session in the AMPscript Bootcamp. This is our second session where we're going to be inviting new builders to build out some of our solutions. So in today's session, we've got Barca who's joining us, and we're going to be continuing on the build that we worked in our last session, continuing to build out that welcome email personalization, and then also going into the loyalty steps as well. We have our one more session next week, so please do sign up if you're interested to be a builder in that next session. We've got a lot of applicants already, but please do continue to sign up. So let's start with looking at our 2 use cases. So first one, we're just going to continue with this welcome email personalization, then we'll go into the loyalty steps. And then before we jump into the platform, we're probably going to, depending on Barca's experience, just go through a quick overview of Marketing Cloud, take a look at the email design system, which is where we're building using our AMPscript, and then take a look at some of those data extensions that's feeding the data as well, and then start working right in the build. So for our use case, we've got a welcome email for Northern Trail Outfitters. And where we had started in our last session, it didn't really have any personalization. We were able to add a name, first name, and then we were able to look up an alternate greeting. And now we just want to do some formatting of that name we have the alternate comes in as a full name, but we want to kind of sort of trim that down to be just first name, and then use some functionality to make sure that the formatting is consistent. So it should be relatively straightforward, but utilizing some cool AMPscript functions that we've already worked in previous in the sessions. So this is what we covered in the first first session, steps 1 and 2. And this, for the third session, we're going to be using the substring index of subtract function and proper case to do the formatting we just talked about. In our second use case, we're going to make a duplicate copy of that email, and then this is going to be a specific welcome email for those loyalty members that breaks out and details those steps that they could take that are personalized to each of those loyalty members that they can make the most of their loyalty program. So we want to display those unique steps. We also want to display them in a chronological order. And then we want to display some custom content if one of those steps includes warranty within the steps itself. And that's what these are the processes we're going to go through. First, we're going to be using lookup rows to access that data. And then we're going to be creating a for loop to cycle through all of those steps. And then we're going to be using the concat function to, within each one of those loops, to keep building all of those steps so they represent as one piece of content. We'll use lookup ordered rows to display them in order, and then format, we'll use those to display the current date. And then last but not least, we'll be using the index of and the if then function to render that custom content based on the warranty part, one of the steps there. All right, so let's, I'm going to stop sharing, and then Barca, we are going to have you share. We'll dive right into the platform, and we'll start with a quick overview of the environment, set up a couple of tabs for you for the build, and then we'll be off and running.
Sure, Tim. I'll start sharing my screen now.
Excellent. So we're going to start and work in the email studio. That's where we're going to do the majority of our work. So if we want to click in there, fantastic. And then we're going to navigate to the email that we had worked on last time. So in the at the top under content, if you want to, right next to the we're going to click on that. And there should be a folder that'll appear on the left-hand side where we'll be able to navigate to that specific email content itself. So, under, it should be under, so if you click hands-on, I think it's under emails. And I think if you click on that NTO welcome email, so this is where we left off earlier in our last session. So this is fantastic. We're going to create a new tab. So we want to go into our data extension folder to pull up the data extension field values that we're going to use to render this email. So if you want to actually duplicate this tab up on the very top where that right, if you right click on that email marketing cloud, and you can duplicate, yeah.
Okay.
And then we're going to go exactly where you were navigating into the data extension folder. So under that subscriber. So yeah, if you use the tab to the right, we'll leave this as the email, but then the tab that you had just created,
Okay.
yeah, that tab there, we'll click into there. And then we'll go under subscribers where you were navigating before. Yeah. And then under data extensions. And then we have that folder under AMPscript Bootcamp. Yeah. And then we'll go over a couple of different data extensions here. So the first data extension is this email send data extension. So if you click into that, this has all the data that we would use when we are sending the email to all of those new loyalty members. So it has, subscriber key, email address. It has the basic name there. This was what we'll probably using when we're doing our preview and testing. And then if you go back to at the top where it says that AMPscript Bootcamp folder, it should be right to the left. Soon it says email send, and then it says AMPscript Bootcamp right to the left of the, yeah, if you click into there. The second data extension we'll take a look at is this universal file. This was what we also used in our last example. Again, this is a universal data extension where you might have all different types of data points related to your subscriber. And this is where we're pulling that full name field down there at the bottom for that alternate name that we had set up last time. So just from a reference standpoint, this is another data set. These are all of the subscribers that are, a mock-up version of all of our subscribers. Yep, and if you want to click in there one more time. The last data extension that we're going to be using today are these welcome steps. So if you click into that welcome steps data extension, these are those loyalty steps that are related to each subscriber that we're going to want to output. So if you click on the records tab right next to properties, yeah, we can see the data. So for each subscriber, which is that customer key there on the left, depending on which of the subscribers, they're going to have a loyalty step and then a month that's related to. So this is the data that we're going to be using when we personalize the email with the loyalty steps. And you can see that they're in no particular order, and then each subscriber could have multiple different steps and bonus months. This is where we're going to be using that lookup rows to do a for loop into all this data in a minute. So just wanted to give you a quick overview of the data that we're working in. So let's go into the one more thing I want to do before we get started is I want to send you a link to this function resource, which is where we're going to be referring to our code. I'm just going to drop this in the general chat. This is that handy developer code resource where it has all of the AMPscript functions. We're going to be accessing that as we build out each of our solutions there. So if you want to have a tab that has in that link, we'll be going back and forth into this documentation. Fantastic. Okay, fantastic. So let's go back to the email content itself. And so that was your second tab, one tab over to the left. So we'll leave this as our data extension folder tab. But if you go to the browser tab just to the left of this one, yep, that one right there, we're going to go into the email itself. And so you can hit the edit button on the upper right-hand corner. So we're going to go when we're going to edit this email. So that's, over there, just to the right. Yep, perfect. Plug in there. And then if you want to hit edit content. All right. So we're going to go into this email, and then just to give you a quick tour of how this email is set up, if you, just as you were navigating with your mouse over the email itself, you can see when you hover over the mouse and you sort of, move up and down the email itself, there's different blocks that are set up here. So this is a part of an email design system that you can set up in Marketing Cloud, where each of these different blocks are individual blocks where you can go and edit. I think this was something that Shanique had mentioned was kind of cool functionality within Marketing Cloud, and that we're going to be going into these specific blocks to make changes And that's just sort of a standard setup for an email design system. So the first block that we're going to go and edit is that right under the logo itself, there should be, so if you scroll up to that little white space, right above that, it's sort of hard. Yeah, it says if you scroll down just with that mouse, bring it right there, click into where it says code snippet. So if you scroll up just a little bit, sometimes it's hard to find. So right there, yep, click right in there. Yeah, it's kind of tricky. And so this is sort of good best practice is to set up this code snippet block at the top, relatively at the top of your email. And this is where in the last session, you can see that that's a specific block. You can see where it's named there as code snippet. And this is where we set this up in the last session. And it can be good practice or best practice if you want to set most of your AMPscript copy in something like this code snippet. It's good for two reasons. One, it allows you to know if there's any troubleshooting, one source to go to. You don't have to hunt through different blocks. It's like, where's this code working? And then it's also recommended by Salesforce for the most part for performance reasons to have it in a code snippet. Sometimes if you have a content block like a free form or an HTML block, it'll actually modify the code so it works with the WYSIWYG. So if you have a code snippet block, it won't do that. Okay, right. And then just to give you one last tour of the sections that we've got here, we have them all sort of commented out, and that's where that slash and the star, we've got all of those steps in place. So we've sort of pre-designated sections within this block of where we're going to be doing some of the work. So you can see for the first session, we did, step 1 and step 2, we've already built in the code there. And so now we're going to be working in step 3. So, but before we do that, I wanted to do a little bit of cleanup. So if you scroll up to the top and you see how there's like a lot of white space on step 1, right between that first line on line 9, and then there's a bunch of space there. So why don't you just click in there and let's delete some of that white space. Let's have it have one white space between that var statement and then step 1. So if you delete that line there, yeah, and then one more line we'll delete. Perfect. And then same thing at the bottom of that code. Let's bring it up so there's a space. Yeah. And one more. Okay, cool. And then one other little, it's really minor, but I kind of like to do it. So I like to have like the var statement be all caps. So see where it says VAR in lower caps? You want to just change that to capital VAR. Sometimes it's just helpful for these functions to be in all caps. And so it's a V like a Victor VAR.
Okay.
Yep. And then same thing for that set statement. If you want to just replace that set, so it's all caps. So SET. Perfect. Yep. And then and this we want to check the variables that we are setting. So in that var statement, we've set a first name as a variable, but we never set that subscriber key variable on line 11. So let's copy that subscriber key variable that's starting at the @ Yep. So we're going to highlight that and copy it. Yeah, just the subscriber key part. Yep, perfect. Let's copy that by hitting Control C. And then we're gonna, at the end of line 6, we're just gonna add a comma after that first name. Yep, and then a space. Yep, perfect. So then we just basically declared that other variable. So it sort of helps cleaning up our code a little bit. And I think those are the only variables that we've got so far, but just helps, clean things up a little bit. And we were working fast and furiously in our last session, so we just didn't really have the time to go back into that. So I think that just helps us clean up that a little bit. And then just to go be a little bit more, following the same for on line 11, let's make that set an all caps. See where that set begins? Yeah, so we'll just make that SET in all caps.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then there's a set on line 14 as well. Let's change that to all caps, just sort of make it consistent. And then one other thing, we typically like whenever you're doing your code in an if statement. So you see on line 13 that if statement begins and then it ends on 15. So that set statement is sort of inside of that if statement. So what we'd like to do is indent that set statement 2 spaces. So if you put your mouse right before the set.
14?
Yep.
Line.
And then,
okay.
Yep. And then just space it over 2. Perfect. So that's just, this helps you know, and you'll see when we build out the next, when we build out our for loop with the lookup rows, it'll just be helpful to sort of see where things are lining up. So that sort of just cleans up our code there. Okay, so fantastic. And then thank you for doing that. So then to help set up the scenario that we have left for this welcome email, what we're going to want to do is preview this email we're going to select the date extension that we had selected so that we can see the current state of what this email is doing. So if you want to go in the email itself, right above the code, see where it says content and it's there's a blue line. Yeah, right to the right of that, if you want to click preview and test. Yep, right there. Perfect. This gives you the ability to preview and test your email. And then there's a little blue folder right below that. Yep, let's click into there. Now we're going to navigate to the date extension folder that we have above. So if you go to that date extensions on the left and open up that little caret right to the left. So you want to stay in that email. So you're doing good there. So if you want to, if you want to go back to that email tab. Yep. And then you see on the lower, like a little bit down by that, below the blue folder. Yes, exactly. See, there's a data extensions folder right there. Yep. So if you click on the arrow, perfect. And then if you click on the hands-on arrow to the left of that, see there's a little, yep, perfect. And then you want to click on that, and that'll bring in the AMPscript Bootcamp data extensions. And now you can select that email send data extension. You can just select that right there. Perfect. And you can select any record here. So if you go over and select any row, and that'll highlight it.
Okay, how about this one?
Yep. And then if you just click on that row, perfect. And then on the lower right-hand side, you can hit the select button. See down there on the lower right-hand side at the very bottom on the right. Yep, all the way down there to the right. See, it has there's a little select button right down, a little further down. It might be maybe blocked by your browser.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. Perfect. So that's selecting the date extension. And now you can see the email sort of comes to life, right? So we see the Dear Jane Doe there. And if you wanted to see right next to that blue folder, there's an arrow. If you clicked on that arrow, it'll cycle through the different people in this date extension. So you can see Paul populated there. So this is a way that we can preview the data that it's doing for the lookup. And then if you click the arrow one more time to the right, let's just see what we've got here. Okay, so here's an example. So the way this was set up on last time is that we're trying to render the name that's provided in this data extension. When that name is not there, then we're doing a lookup to that universal data extension to pull in the full name, like we see here. So you can see her there over on the left under that blue folder. There's a bunch of the different data points that are from your data extension. And you can see name there. That name field is blank. You can see that, a couple of spaces down there. And so what this is doing is pulling in the full name for Patty, which is coming through as Patty Carlson. So what we want to do to make sure that this aligns, we want to represent the first name of Patty, not Patty Carlson. So that's the next thing that we're going to want to do in AMPscript is we want to take, whenever this populates, we want to pull out just the Patty part and not show the space in the Carlson part of it. So that's what we're going to do now is use the substring function to take this variable and sort of trim it down a little bit to show that.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we're going to go back into that content tab just to the left of that preview and test. So you'll stay in the email itself. So if you scroll down just a little bit, see where it says preview and test with that blue bar. Yep. And then just to the left of that, you want to go to that content section. Perfect. So we're going to be navigating between those two areas. The content takes you back to the core content of the email. the preview and test takes you to the area where you can preview and test. So perfect. Okay, now we're going to want to navigate over into that email to that code snippet block, which was right below the logo. So if you go over to the right, if you bring your mouse over to the right, just below the logo in the email itself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll click right in. Perfect. So now we're going to go in that step 3. This is where we're going to be in line 17. This is the section where we're going to be using the substring, the index of, subtract, and the proper case. So if you want to put your cursor right below there, we're going to add a bunch of white spaces in there just to create some space for us to code. So you can just hit return a bunch of times there.
You want me to delete the space?
Yeah, you can. Well, you can hit return a bunch of times. We want to add a bunch of space there so we can.
Oh, you
so
want...
yeah, if you go. Yep.
Okay.
Perfect, and then just hit that a bunch of times. So just create some space there because we're going to be pasting it. Perfect. Okay, excellent. That's fair. That's fantastic. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to want to do is use the substring function. We have this first name variable that's being set on line 14. And now we want to use that variable and cut it up to only show the first name whenever that happens. So we're going to go over to your tab that has the AMPscript function reference guide that you had clicked through. I think it's your last tab. Yep. And then we're going to go and let's try the search function. If you search in that search bar under guides, let's see if that works. So yeah, so if you go, let's see, oh, maybe that didn't work. So if you go hit the back button, let's see if it goes back to that page. Yeah. And then you see there on the left under guides, there's a little search bar to the left. Yeah, try typing in substring. See if that comes up. Oh, okay, so it's, yeah, maybe that, there we go. If you click on that substring, so at the very top, if you scroll up a little bit, yeah, click there in that little link. Yeah, let's see what happens if we go in there. So that takes us to, okay, that's not necessarily, okay, let's hit the back button. I think we'll have to just use the regular navigation to find it. Okay, so if you scroll down on the right, this is going to be under the, I think it's under the utility function. So if you scroll down in the main menu, and then I think, yeah, if you just keep scrolling there, yeah, let's see, I think it's under
data extension.
I think it's under utilities. So yeah, keep scrolling. Or it might be under string. We're getting close. Right. String, here we go. And then, yep, so there's substring. So if you scroll up just a little bit, yep, see it says substring right there. Yeah, let's click into there. And let's take a look at what substring does for us. Okay, so what substring does is that it's got 3 different sections here. So section 1 is what you want to you know, the variable that you want to break up and sort of you know, trim. The second value is the character position of where you want to start that value to still be there. And then the third value is where you want it's the maximum length of the string that you're looking to output. So they give a good example there where they've got this, you know, value of A, B, C, D, E, F. You can sort of see that it says substring, and then in quotes it says A, B, C, D, E, and F. And so what it's saying is that I want to output A, B, C, D, E, F. I want to start at line 2, position 2, and I want to make it 2 fields long. So position 2 is B in the A, B, you know, C, D, E, F. So that's why that outputs as a B. And because it's only the length of 2, it just outputs B and C. So that's how that substring works. So that'll be really helpful. We can just modify that on our use case. So if you want to grab the code there itself, the whole code, Okay, cool. That copied it. Let's go into our AMPscript in our email. And then let's paste that in and see what happens when you paste it in. Awesome. Okay, now because we're not outputting this code, we don't actually need the % equals that is before. Yep, so we can remove that at the beginning and at the end. And you can remove the equals as well.
Okay.
So we'll just start with substring. Yep, perfect. And then let's go back to that substring one more time. I just want to see. Okay, so I think what we're probably going to want to do is set the variable to substring. Okay, so we'll add that. So let's go back into the email itself, and we'll fill out what we need to do for substring. Okay, so the first value for substring is what we want to cut up. What's the variable? In their example, it's ABCDEF, but in our example, it's going to be the first name variable. So if you go up to line 14 and you copy that, first name variable where we're setting it, and then you're going to want to, you won't need to put this in quotes. I think it's fine if you just have the variable itself.
Okay.
And you can paste that in there, and then I think you can remove the quotes before and after that.
So will it not change the meaning of this? Like what is the significance of within the course and because it's a variable, right? That's what,
great.
If you,
Great question. Typically in AMPscript, if you have a variable, you don't need quotes. If you have, like in that example, it was just text A, B, C, D, E, F, then you have to use quotes because that's how it designates. Hey, if you want to just put in something here, you need to surround it by quotes. But a variable should work there. Okay, perfect. Now the second variable determines where we want to start for our use case. Now in our use case, it was Patty Carlson. We want to just output Patty. So we want to start at line 1. So we want to begin at the P of Patty. So if you go to where it says 2 for that value 2, we just want to change that to a 1 on line 19 on that substring. So so instead of the 2, so where it says at first name, comma 2, we want to change that to at first name, comma 1. So that's going to start at 1. Perfect. All right, that's fantastic. 2 out of 3. Now the third part is the length, right? And so in the example that we took it from, it was A, B, C, D, E, F. The length was 2, so it just outputted B and C. So in our case, we don't know the length because it's going to change every time there's a name. We don't know the length of the first name. It could be 5 letters for Patty. It could be Charles, which is 7, I think. So it all changes. So now we need to come up with a different way of coding to find out where how to determine that length. And luckily, with each use case, there's a space in the name. So it was Patty space Carlson. So if we use this function called index of, we'll be able to return the value of where that space occurs in our variable, and we can use that to set that last section within the code itself. So we're going to go back into that AMPscript function tab, and we're going to look for, I think it's, if you hit the arrow back, it's in the same list of functions. So if you scroll up just a little bit on the right, I think it's, and then if you scroll down just a little bit, it's in the string section. So if you go over to the right and just scroll down just a little bit, and then you see where it says index of, so let's click in that index of function. Perfect. So here's where, this is what index of does. So it's simple. There's 2 fields that are included. The first field is your variable of what you want to do a check on. So in that case, it would be our first name variable. And then the second thing is what you're looking for in that index of, like what are you searching for? And so the best example is to and where that starts is the example they gave here. So the example is they have a variable that's set to you will love our product, right? And so in the index of function, the ABC variable is the variable, which is you will love our product. And then what they want to find is what's the position where this love word appears in that, that string of, text. And you can see it returns, the index of returns, it's line 10, which is great. So what we want to do is use that same scenario, but instead of love, we want to use a blank space, because Patty space Carlson, we know when that space happens, that's the end of the first name. And so we should be able to stop it at that point. So yep, let's copy that code. And we're going to go back into the email itself. And then you can just paste it in, wherever you want. Perfect. And then, then we'll remove the percent equals, and then the percent equals at the end. Perfect. And then let's modify this before we move it. So index of, now we want to use that first name variable. That's going to be our first variable in the index of. So if you want to copy the first name variable from up above, be the same variable.
Sure. No, I'm not able to copy.
Perfect. Yeah, and you want to make sure you get that at in there. Yep, Brian, you can paste in. You've already got an at in there. Perfect. Excellent. And then what we're looking for in this name is we're looking for a space. So if you want to remove the love part, but leave a space in there, like a blank space, and then just make a space in the space bar.
Okay.
You want to have a space in the quotes, though. You see how the quotes just needs, if you go in between the quotes, perfect, excellent. And we want just one space though. So if you can just delete, in the quotes, I think you've got 2 spaces in there. So if you just delete one of those spaces, perfect, that looks good. Okay, excellent. So there you go. So that's going to return a value of where in this Patty space Carlson, where does that space occur? And that's going to give us a length of how, where we know the first name should stop. So what you can do is you can copy that entire code that you just created. And let's highlight that code piece you just created. Perfect. And then we're going to copy that. And then you're going to paste that in where you see that value of 2 in the line above. So
instead of 2, I need to paste this. Instead of 2, correct. I need to paste.
Absolutely.
Oh, got it.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Looks good. Excellent. Now there's an equal sign there if you want to remove that equal sign.
Sure.
At the end of there. Yeah. Excellent. And now you can remove line 20 because that is good to go. Okay, fantastic. All right. So now what we're going to want to do is we want to what we want to do is we want to modify this first name that it comes through. So you can see on line 13, we're checking to see if that first name value, if it's empty, then we're going to this date extension to pull in the full name, the Patty _ Carlson. So what we can do there is now within that same, same if statement, we're going to set the first name to this value, and then we're going to also set it so that it's going to format that first name as well. So what you want to do at the end of line 14, let's make a space. So if you put your cursor at the end of line 14, we can create a return and add a space between 14 and 15. So if you put your mouse cursor at the very end, and then hit return, perfect. And then let's do a set, all caps. And then a space. And then let's copy from line 14 the at first name equals. Way to that equals. Perfect. Let's copy that and we'll paste it in 15. Now let's bring up your substring code from 21. Cut that, and we're going to paste that in right after that equals. Okay, great. And then you can delete line 22. Okay. So let's preview this. I think that's looking good. So basically what it's going to do is that if that value, that name value is empty, it's going to go look up Patty Carlson. And then it's going to say, okay, well, we don't want to display Patty Carlson. We just want to display Patty. And so that's taking that first name and saying, okay, we're just going to shrink this down. And let's see how that works.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, it did.
Awesome. Very good stuff.
Wow.
It worked. Fantastic. Very cool. Nice job. That's
Thank you.
some pretty complicated code, and we're not done yet. Because one thing you can notice is that there's a space. See how Patty, there's a little space there. So that's one other thing we need to work on, is that what this function's doing is it's saying the index of is saying this is where we're looking for that space, but we really want to have that tells you the length of what Patty should be with a space. So what we want to do is we want to change the code so it's a length of Patty without the space. So we need to reduce that number by 1. So let's go back into the code, and we're going to use another function. Yep, awesome, very good. So now we're going to use another function that is in the math section for subtract. So subtract is going to give us ability to change a number. So that index of is returning a number, and all we want to do is that number that gets returned from index of, we want to reduce it just by 1 number, so it just reduces that space. So let's go into that AMPscript tab. Yep. And then if you scroll, if you back out of this once, and we'll go back to that main menu. Yep. And then, so if you scroll down, so it should be in the, or scroll up to the math section. It should be in the ends, And we're looking for in the math, we're looking for subtract. So let's click on subtract. And so relatively straightforward here. There's 2 values. So you want your value that which is basically your number, and then that's value 1. And then the second value is how much you want to reduce it by. So in our case, it's going to be 1. So in their example, their first value is 20. It's a variable set to 20. And the second value is a variable set to 5. So 20 minus 5 is 15. So that's how that works. So let's copy that subtract code. Nice. We'll go there and we'll bring it back into the code itself. And this can be a little, so let's paste it in on line 23 because it's going to get a little complicated in how this is going to work. So what we're basically doing is we want within the third field of substring where that index of, we want to start that with the subtract and the open paren. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the first half of that code. So if you highlight the subtract all the way through the first open paren, but just the first open paren. So we're going to go see where that, right before that ABC variable, there's an open paren. So we want to pull, there, great, copy that. Now we're going to want to paste that in right before the index of in line 15.
Right,
so
that's
if you go right, see where that index of is, a little bit further down in the code, right after the number 1 and the comma, there's the index of, right. So right after that comma, you want to paste in, that's where you want to paste in that subtract. Perfect. Okay. So what this is doing is saying subtract, our value is the index of the first name, and on all that. So that's our first value, is that index of first name and the paren with the space. So then after the paren at the very end, so there's 2 closed parens at the very end. The first one you want to add a comma to. So if you go at the end where it says index of at first name, comma, and then there's a space, there's an open paren, a closed paren right at the end of there. not the last one, but the one right before it. So if you move your mouse over just a little bit more to the right, so
this one.
yep,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So you want to do it one more space over. We want to do it in between those two parens.
Okay.
At the very end, you want to put your right there. Perfect. And then click into that space, and then hit a comma.
Hit a comma. Okay.
Yep. And then we're going to add a 1.
Before comma?
After the comma. Yep. And then we're going to add a closed paren. A closed parentheses, so that so you want that same character again, that same closed parentheses right there. You just want to add another closed parentheses.
Yeah, got it.
So right after the 1, yep. So yep. See at the very end of that line, there's a closed parentheses. Yeah. So we want to remove the single quote, because that'll we'll leave that as is. So we'll take out the single quote before and after the 1.
Can you come again, Tim?
So
it's close bracket,
right
round bracket, same thing, not the comma.
Not the comma, right? Oh, okay.
So yeah,
Thank
the
you.
round.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, in India we call it brackets.
Thank you.
Instead of parentheses.
It's a team effort. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you want to add a closed bracket right after that last closed bracket.
Close. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yep. Well, yeah. Add that closed bracket right there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I know it's a lot, because we basically nested this subtract. We nested this index of inside of this subtract, which is being nested within the substring. It's like these 3 sections of code all nested within each other. But I think you set that up right. Let's go and preview and test that and see if we remove the space for Patty. Okay, good. So the function function and subtract parameter ordinal. Okay, so there's something a little off. Oh, it's okay. Let's go back to the code. And then let's go back into that block. Yeah. And then on line 23, let's remove that code.
Got it.
Yep. Perfect. Awesome. And then let's go and preview and test.
Yeah.
There it goes. There's the space. The space is gone for Patty. Excellent. Nicely done. A great group effort. So thanks to whoever chimed in. That was wonderful. And then let's, right next to that blue folder on the left, let's just cycle through a couple of these different records and just see. So just to the left of that, there's an arrow, or that's fine. We can go to that data extension. So if you go to the data extension, so yep, right there, yep. And then go under hands-on, yep. And then under AMPs, yep, we'll click email send. And let's select the very first record at the very top. Yep. And then let's hit select, perfect. Okay, so this example, John, and then right to the left of that blue folder, there's an arrow. So if you see that little arrow, yep, if you click on that, so this will cycle through all the examples. So Jane, I think, was another one that had, right, there's no name in here. So that got truncated to Jane. So that looks good. And then let's arrow through one more time. Looking good. Yeah, so we're validating all of our data and excellent. So nicely done, Barca. That was I know that was a lot of complicated code. Let's go back in there and just take a look again at what this is doing in the code itself, because it's kind of fun and kind of cool. Using three functions all in one code. So again, that substring has got 3 variables, right? When we first started, it was, what's the variable that you're looking to render? Where is it starting? Line 1. So that's relatively simple. And then the third value is what is the length of that value? And that's where we use that index of to determine the length to the space. But we had to add this subtract of the index of, because it produced 1 character too much, and we just subtracted 1 character from that index of total to give our final value. So in Patty's case, it outputs like a 5, or in John's case, it would output a 4 because there's only 4 letters. So a lot there, but very cool on how you executed that. Nicely done. So if you wanted to do what we'll take on line 16, we're just going to remove that extra space and just bring that up. Perfect. And that's it. I think for this session, I know we only have 10 minutes left, but I think that was a really complex code that was really nicely done. And thanks again for the group feedback. So Barka, at this point, I'd love to get your feedback on, building in Marketing Cloud, working in AMPscript and the AMPscript block and using code and all of that. Just want to get your thoughts on, what your experience was and all of that.
Yeah, sure, Tim. It was like, first of all, I would like to really thank you and JB for organizing. And I don't have hands-on with AMPscript, to be frank. I'm just good with, email studio, like, just getting the direct, the build-ins from the content. But this was my first time and I'm really glad. And I think with this, I'll have daring to go ahead and learn AMPscript. Like, that's my motivation now. Like, I'm really thankful to you as well as JB, even to you, dear, for organizing everything for everyone. Yeah. Thank you for giving me this opportunity again.
Well, you did a great job. Your first time, you're a natural, and you could see as you were building along, you were naturally going back and forth and going right into the code snippet and getting comfortable. And I think, like JB said at the very beginning of this series, this is simple. The functionality, and it's great because you don't have to be a hardcore developer to understand it. But I think in watching this series, I think one of the takeaways is that it is simple. But I think if you spend the time to work at it and follow sort of the best practices to do it, it will continue to be simple. For those people that go in and just, like, I'm going to go search on Stack Exchange and literally copy a block of copy and drop it in, and then try to make a couple of changes and try to jam it in, that can get complicated and your code can start, going sideways and you're not really sure what's the best way to do it. But if you're methodical and you follow things in the right way, it'll come together. And I think this example with Substring is a perfect example of that, right? We sort of followed a step to do that. If we had gone through and said, let's find an example, go into Stack Exchange, and let's find an example where you take a first and last name, and it removes the space. You probably could find this code, like you just pasted it in. We could have just pasted it in and be like, all right, let's try this, let's try that, see if it works. But you wouldn't really understand what's going on here. What's it really doing for all 3 of those functions in that line? So if you keep in that same frame of mind, the more complex it gets, you're sort of building on these skill sets. So I think hopefully that helped. Help shed a little bit of light on that approach. And I definitely would recommend the approach of understanding it versus copy and pasting, big blocks of code. I don't know if others have any thoughts on that as well on the channel as far as approaches, but definitely love to get other people's thoughts on the coding approach. For sure.
Thank you, Tim. And it now gave me the courage to, explore more. I mean, from this, I feel very confident now. I mean, I'm really thankful to you guys. Yeah.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So wonderful. I mean,
sharing.
we'll,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So next week's session is our last session. We're hoping to keep this going beyond next week, and we'll talk about that more. We're just going to continue building out the use case that we talked about today. I think it was just been helpful just to go through these scenarios. So let me just go back into the deck real quick and just talk about the next session, which is next week, same time. And I think we had a plan to continue to build out different use cases, but I think as everyone's seen that there's a lot of value in taking the time and doing these things right. So we'll probably continue building on the same use cases that we were doing before, which was the welcome email, going through the steps of using proper case, one more area of formatting, and then we'll dive into the loyalty email to do a lookup rows, a for loop, and all of that. So
awesome.
Thanks,
Tim. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I'm so excited for the last use case as well. It's going to be a little bit more advanced than this. So thank you very much, Tim and Barka. We have our last session, same time next Tuesday. And after that, I would like to announce the Marketing Cloud Personalization Bootcamp series, 10-day series starting from July 25th. It's going to be every Tuesday and Thursday for 10 days. So make sure that you join the group, the Phoenix user group. You get all the notifications about the new events getting published. So we hope to see you there as well. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks to you once again.
Thank you.
And this session recording, it will be shared on the YouTube channel Trailblazing Together. You can also find that using @MC Learning Camp, no spaces. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.